I think I also got the idea for it during lockdown, during the pandemic. So there was a sense of wanting to be outside and also a sense of the outside being dangerous and kind of intimidating, strange forces at play. Uh, I also couldn't remember the last time I had seen a good snow monster movie or really come across a great snow monster book. And I may be forgetting a couple. The Terror, I know, is a huge one. So I've got to throw that one out there. So the premise is that Holly and Brian are a younger couple, say late 20s, and they're driving to a ski village very far from their house to save the relationship, which has been struggling for the last year since they encountered an unidentified trauma last winter. And they're getting triggered left and right just by the presence of snow and by the anniversary of whatever had happened last year. And so they're going out and they get stuck in a blizzard on this very remote road and spin out. And then Holly wakes up after the crash and realizes Brian is missing and she can't find him. So they're playing phone tag and they're doing their best to connect, but the signal isn't working. They just can't seem to get a hold of each other. And they start to realize that being pursued by some sort of primal snow creature that seems oddly personal and oddly fixated on them. It's coming for them and anyone around them, and they're not sure why. And it definitely feels tied to some horrible thing that happened 12 months earlier.
And the snow monster, I mean, what's your approach to crafting and constructing a monster, using this one as an example?
I went back to Jaws in my head. Um, it's easier to show less in a book. If I were to imagine this as a movie, I'm hoping they do it less is more. I wanted to give an impression of this thing where it wasn't just a shaggy white furred creature actually walking around Bigfoot-like, something you couldn't quite get a handle on and something that was getting swished and lost in the blowing storm. The unnameable bad thing, which is kind of what monsters are all about. You can't really get your head around it and you begin to get a shape and it's something that really hits you in the gut. So everybody that sees it in the book has a different, very visceral reaction that connects to something personal in their life. So even like the secondary characters that just happen to glimpse it or get caught in the crossfire, they all have a moment where everybody kind of sees it a little differently. I'm not sure where in the process I identified this, but I started to model her role, not her as a character, but her role as, I can't remember his name, the sheriff in No Country for Old Men. So in the movie, he was played by Tommy Lee Jones. He seems to be a secondary character for a while in that story. And as the story progresses, you realize he is us and he is the moral center. He's always picking up the pieces. He always just misses the key action. And he makes it all the way to the end of that story, having kind of ridden through, like, he has this reaction, like, what the hell is going on in my town? And that's Kendra's story, really. She's always just trying to do her job. And she also has her own baggage from an earlier storm. She lost a couple, I think it was 8 weeks earlier in the book. Another couple had vanished on her watch in a previous snowstorm. And she's feeling responsible for it and feels that the town also thinks she's responsible for it in terms of dereliction of duty. So she's really, really determined to put a cap on all this that night. The whole book takes place in about 8 hours, I think. I think it's the first time I've done that. Yeah, it is, because Fellow Mortals probably spanned half a year, maybe even upwards of a year. I'm trying to remember how that one sprawled out. Bellwether was decades. I mean, I had that main character as a child. I think actually as an infant, I did. I had Molly as an infant. She makes it all the way to about 21 in that book, or 18 or something. And Ghost Love, even that lasts, I think, 3 months in the time frame. Yeah, so this one, it was an interesting exercise. I think I just really wanted to write something very pure and very precise. I always admire the extremely tight 90-minute movie. It just goes. Something like Die Hard, it's 1 night in the tower. That's it. I still had to include some flashbacks in this one. You've got to kind of, sneak some background stuff in. Always a challenge because I know a lot of people hate flashbacks. I don't personally if they're done well. And I tried to keep mine pretty brisk to get back to the main action. It's that, or there's a lot of expository dialogue. Well, let me talk to a stranger about that thing that happened to me last year. It just doesn't happen in real life. So I have to find ways to shoehorn that info in. I'm enjoying this one more than anything. I haven't had a book release since Bellwether because Ghost Love, when Audible bought that directly for audio, and then IG Publishing put out the paperback 6 months later. Like we kept the paperback, right? So they just put out a little pressing on that one. And then I did the short story collection with Audible. So there was, there were no release parties for, it just turned on one day and it was out in the world. So it's been a long time since I've done something like a book signing or any real event. And it's great. I really do like it. I love meeting other authors, especially now that I'm in a definite genre. So I jumped around so much, I couldn't seem to find a crew. Like, I don't know who would hang out with somebody who wrote Fellow Mortals and Bellwether and Ghost Love. It's like, I don't know what Mahoney's doing. So now it's the horror people that I'm paying attention to. And I get to meet a lot of really great writers at some of my events and meeting the readers. Instagram is my main social media, but God, they're active. Like there's such a great group of horror readers online and they're just into it. And it's the fan in me is very happy to be part of this. Where Michael Chabon had a piece of advice. I probably heard this 20 years ago. I think somebody asked him, what would he have done differently when the Mysteries of Pittsburgh came out? He wrote that, I think, is his MFA project. And his professor sent it off to his own agent without telling Michael, and they got like the biggest debut deal in history, publishing history. So Michael Chabon was that guy. He's like, 22 and he's got this giant deal. And they asked him what he would have done differently, and he said, I would have enjoyed it more. He spent the whole time panicked, the whole time thinking, oh my God, I've got to live up to this, and I've got to think of the next thing to write. And I think he basically became Grady Tripp from Wonder Boys. Because I think he spent something like 6-7 years writing the next book, which ended up, he abandoned it and then cranked out Wonder Boys in like I don't know, I think it was like 2 weeks or something. So enjoy it. Whenever I see somebody who's a first time published author, I'm always like, my God, just savor every moment of this and don't try to get through it. Don't try to survive whatever's happening. Just be grateful it's out there. Nobody can take it away. You'll always have been published.